Why were 5 rifles pointing at her head? Rachel Cross stood at the Fort Bragg firing range, checking weapons like she did every morning. The sun barely up, coffee still warm in her hand, just another Tuesday except it wasn't. The sound came first. Attack dogs, barking with that particular fury that means someone's about to have a very bad day. Then the boots, heavy, fast, synchronized. She didn't turn around, didn't need to, she already knew. Get on your knees, now. 5 M4 rifles, all pointed at her spine. Cold metal handcuffs bit into her wrists before she could even set down the weapon she'd been inspecting. The concrete was cold against her cheek, tasted like dust and old gun oil. Sergeant Hayes pressed his knee hard into her back, harder than necessary, like he was trying to prove something. Rachel Cross, you're under arrest for impersonating a Navy SEAL and theft of classified intelligence. Around them, the world stopped. Dozens of Delta Force operators, mid-training, frozen in place, staring. The woman they saw every morning, the quiet range safety officer who smiled politely and kept the weapons clean, was being forced to the ground like a terrorist, like a threat, like someone dangerous. Sarge, she's just a range officer. A young soldier's voice, confused, uncertain. Shut up, she's a national security threat. Rachel didn't resist, didn't fight, didn't say a word, but her eyes, cold as Arctic ice, swept across each face, memorizing, recording, especially when her gaze stopped at the far corner where Colonel Marcus Webb stood watching with a half-smile playing on his lips. No one else noticed. No one else saw her hand form a small signal, thumb and forefinger, the number 13, then gone, a blink and you'd miss it. What was about to unfold would make everyone understand that predator and prey aren't always who they appear to be. The morning had started like any other. Rachel arrived at 0545, unlocking the range with the same careful precision she'd shown every day for the past 3 years. As a range safety officer, her job was simple on paper. Ensure weapons were maintained, targets properly set, safety protocols followed. Simple, mundane. The kind of job people forgot you existed in, and that was exactly the point. She moved through the weapons cache with movements so precise they seemed almost robotic. Her right hand trembled slightly as she lifted an M4, a subtle shake most attributed to too much coffee, not enough sleep. Rachel knew better. Nerve damage from old injuries never fully healed, but she'd learned to compensate, shifting smoothly to her left hand when needed, adapting, surviving. Rough night. Jake, another range worker, asked as he noticed her switching hands with her coffee cup. Something like that. Rachel offered a tired smile that didn't quite reach her hazel eyes. Those eyes, brown with hints of gold that caught the morning light, had seen things Jake couldn't imagine, wouldn't want to imagine. What her colleagues didn't notice were the habits, the small things that had become second nature. Before entering any room, Rachel checked every exit, always sat with her back to the wall, facing the door. Her phone positioned at exactly 45 degrees on any surface, using the screen's reflection to monitor her blind spots. The small knife hidden in her boot that she checked every morning with the muscle memory of someone who'd needed it before, needed it to survive. The first sign of trouble came with Captain Brooks, a female instructor whose perfectly styled blonde hair and pressed uniform made her look like she'd stepped out of a recruiting poster. She glanced at Rachel with barely concealed disdain. Safety officers, glorified janitors with clipboards. Lieutenant Park held up an RFID scanner as Rachel passed, just a routine security check, though his eyes narrowed as he scanned her badge. Once, twice, 3 times, systems being weird today, but Rachel saw the way his jaw tightened, the way he glanced at his partner. Something was happening, something deliberate. Corporal Williams, all 220 pounds of him, made a point of shoulder-checking Rachel as he passed. Oops, sorry. A grin that said he wasn't sorry at all. Didn't see you there, safety girl. Rachel absorbed it all without comment, her expression neutral. She dealt with worse, much worse. As she adjusted her stance after Williams' shove, her tactical smartwatch caught the light. The device, originally developed for astronauts but now standard equipment for special forces, showed her heart rate at 55 beats per minute. For a civilian, that would be concerningly low. For someone trained to control their physiological responses under extreme stress, it was perfectly normal. The morning routine shattered when a Delta Force team arrived late, loud and boisterous from what was clearly a successful training evolution. Sergeant Davis, their point man, spotted Rachel setting up Lane 7. "Yo, safety girl, prep that lane for some real warriors. We don't have all day." Rachel moved with quiet efficiency, assembling the target system in 47 seconds. The range record was 2 minutes. Davis's eyebrows rose slightly, but he quickly covered his surprise with dismissal. "Beginner's luck, bet you can't do it twice." Williams decided to test that theory. Accidentally knocked over Rachel's equipment bin. 200 rounds scattered across the concrete like metallic rain. "Oops, better clean that up fast, janitor." Rachel knelt, began collecting the ammunition. Her hands moved with mechanical precision, sorting by caliber as she went. Her eyes never left William's face, even as her fingers identified each round by touch alone. 90 seconds later, every round was sorted and stored, perfectly organized, like it had never been disturbed. Park watched from his position by the range computer. That's impossible hand-eye coordination. Nobody can sort mixed ammunition that fast without looking. A young private approached Rachel, curious. "What's the effective range of an MK-18 carbine?" Without thinking, Rachel replied, 450 meters with match-grade ammunition, 300 with standard ball rounds. But in urban environments, you're typically engaging at under 100 meters, so the shorter barrel's velocity loss becomes less significant than the maneuverability advantage. The words came out naturally, automatically, the way someone speaks when they've lived the knowledge, not just read it, and that's when everything changed. Captain Brooks's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Who gave you permission to speak to my trainees?" Rachel's practiced smile appeared instantly. "Sorry, ma'am, just read it somewhere. Gun magazines, you know." But the damage was done. Several operators exchanged glances. That wasn't information from gun magazines. That was hard-earned knowledge from someone who'd used an MK-18 in combat. Someone who'd fired it in places where every meter mattered. Every second counted. The atmosphere shifted when Colonel Marcus Webb entered the range. Standing 6'3" with silver threading through his close-cropped hair, Webb commanded attention without trying. Everyone straightened unconsciously. Everyone except Rachel. Rachel went absolutely still. Webb's eyes swept the range, paused for just a fraction of a second on Rachel. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, maybe, before his face returned to its professional mask. "Gentlemen, today we're running close-quarters battle drills. I want to see speed, violence of action, and perfect target discrimination." He positioned himself strategically in Rachel's right side peripheral vision, forcing her to turn her head to track him. It was subtle, deliberate. He was testing her bad side, seeing if she'd compensate for an injury he somehow knew about. Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced down. Unknown number. Message in plain text. "They know. Webb knows. You have 6 hours. Get out." Her heart rate didn't change. 55 beats per minute. Steady. Controlled. She deleted the message, went back to work, because running would confirm everything. Staying was the only play she had left. Throughout the day, the tests continued. Brooks asked her to move heavy equipment. Park ran her badge through security checks repeatedly. Williams bumped into her at every opportunity, each one watching, measuring, looking for something that didn't fit, something that proved she was more than she appeared. And she was so much more. But what they didn't understand yet was why. Why a woman with her skills, her training, her experience would spend 3 years pretending to be invisible. Why she'd endure the condescension, the dismissal, the casual cruelty of people who thought she was beneath them. There's a particular kind of patience that comes from loss, from watching people you love die, from surviving when you shouldn't have. Rachel had that patience in abundance. She'd waited 3 years for this moment, 3 years of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. Soon they'd understand. Soon, everyone would know exactly who Rachel Cross really was. But first, she had to survive the next 6 hours. What mark were they talking about? The handcuffs cut deeper as Hayes hauled Rachel to her feet. Blood trickled from where her lip had split against the concrete. She could taste it. Metallic, familiar. The crowd of operators had grown. Word spreading fast through Fort Bragg the way it always did when something interesting happened. Rachel Cross, the quiet safety girl, being arrested for stolen valor, for pretending to be a SEAL. The whispers started immediately. Always knew something was off about her. Probably watched too many movies. Pathetic, some people have no shame. Hayes shoved her forward, parade marching her toward the waiting military police vehicle. Attack dogs still barking, rifles still trained on her back. Like she was about to pull a weapon from thin air. Like she was dangerous. She was, just not in the way they thought. Rachel, what the hell is happening? Jake pushed through the crowd, his face confused and concerned. What are they talking about? You're not a SEAL. Hayes backhanded Jake with enough force to send him stumbling, interfering with a military arrest. Want to join her? Jake backed off, but his eyes stayed on Rachel, looking for an explanation, an answer, something that made sense. Rachel gave him nothing, just that same neutral expression, that same careful blankness she'd worn for 3 years. Because showing emotion now would be a mistake. Showing anything would be a mistake. Colonel Webb stepped forward, pulling out his phone, recording now, for the record, creating evidence, creating narrative. State your name and rank for the record. Rachel Cross, GS7 civilian contractor, range safety officer. And your previous military experience? None, sir. Webb's smile grew. Really? Because we have evidence suggesting otherwise. Evidence that you've been claiming to be a Navy SEAL, wearing unauthorized insignia, accessing classified facilities under false pretenses. I've never claimed to be anything I'm not, sir. Then explain this. Webb held up a photograph, grainy, taken from a distance. Rachel at a veterans bar 6 months ago, talking to someone the camera didn't quite capture, and there on her jacket collar, a small pin, the SEAL trident, the mark that separated the elite from everyone else. Rachel's expression didn't change, but inside something cold settled in her chest, because she'd never worn that pin, never owned that pin, which meant someone had doctored the photo, planted evidence, set this trap carefully. And there was only one person who would know to do that. One person who knew exactly what buttons to push, what accusations would stick. That's not me, sir. Webb laughed. Not you. We have facial recognition. We have testimony from multiple witnesses. We have your fingerprints on classified documents found in unauthorized locations. His voice rose, playing to the crowd now. We have evidence that you've been stealing military secrets, selling intelligence to foreign actors, using the trust people placed in you, the access you were given, to betray everything this uniform stands for. The crowd shifted, anger building, because if there's one thing soldiers hate more than the enemy, it's a traitor. Someone who wears the uniform but serves themselves. Someone who profits from the sacrifice of others. Rachel felt it, the weight of their judgment, their contempt. Part of her wanted to speak, to defend herself, to tell them the truth. But the larger part, the part trained for situations exactly like this, knew better. Knew that anything she said now would be twisted, used against her. So she stayed silent. Webb's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his smile became something razor-sharp. Gentlemen, I've just received authorization. Rachel Cross, you're being transferred to the Special Activities Division for enhanced interrogation regarding national security breaches. Enhanced interrogation. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew what that meant. Black sites, no lawyers, no witnesses. People went into enhanced interrogation and came out broken, if they came out at all. Jake stepped forward again, braver this time. "Sir, with respect, shouldn't she get a lawyer? Due process." "This is a matter of national security," Webb snapped. "Due process applies when we're dealing with citizens who haven't betrayed their country. Rachel forfeited those rights the moment she started selling secrets." He grabbed Rachel's arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "Enjoy your last look at daylight, Cross. Where you're going, the sun doesn't shine." But as he turned her toward the vehicle, something happened. Something no one expected. A voice cut through the chaos, deep, authoritative, carrying the weight of stars and decades. "What the hell is going on here?" General Morrison, 3 stars on his shoulder, silver hair cut military short, eyes that had seen combat in 3 different decades. He walked through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea, everyone stepping aside, everyone straightening. Webb's confidence faltered for just a moment. "General Morrison, sir, we're processing a high-value security threat, classified operation." Morrison looked at Rachel, really looked at her. His eyes narrowed. Then he stepped closer, close enough that Rachel could see the combat infantry badge on his chest, the Purple Heart, the bronze star with V device for valor. Close enough that he could see the tattoo barely visible under her collar. 7 small stars, arranged in a specific pattern, a pattern that meant something to people who knew, people who'd lost teammates, people who'd survived the unsurvivable. Morrison's expression changed, hardened. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He leaned in close to Webb and whispered, but not quiet enough that Rachel couldn't hear. "That mark's real." 4 words that changed everything. Webb's face went white. "General, I don't understand." Morrison's voice dropped to something dangerous. "That tattoo, you see it, 7 stars, Blackwater mission, Syria, 5 years ago. 7 operators went in, only 1 came out." The crowd went silent. Blackwater was legend, whispered about in classified briefings. The mission that went so wrong it had been buried under layers of secrecy and official denial. 7 of America's best, sent into hell, betrayed by intelligence that was either wrong or deliberately falsified. 1 survivor, Ghost 7, who'd crawled through 40 miles of hostile territory, injured, alone, broadcasting a signal that brought in a rescue team, saved 3 local assets who were about to be executed, gathered intelligence that later prevented a chemical weapons attack. Ghost 7, the operator so classified that even her existence was debated. Morrison looked at Webb with something close to contempt. "You just arrested a Medal of Honor nominee, Colonel. A woman who spent 3 years under deep cover investigating the intelligence failure that killed her team." His voice rose now. "A woman working directly for me on a counterintelligence operation that you just compromised." Webb stammered, "Sir, I had reports, evidence that she was." "That she was what?" Morrison stepped closer. "Doing exactly what I ordered her to do, maintaining her cover, investigating the people responsible for Blackwater." The general's eyes swept the crowd, then landed back on Webb with laser focus. "Tell me, Colonel, how did you know about Ghost 7? That's top secret information. Compartmentalized. Need to know only." His voice became deadly quiet. "So how did you know?" Webb's mouth opened, closed, no words coming out, because there was no good answer, no explanation that didn't end with him in handcuffs instead of Rachel. Morrison pulled out his phone, made a call, his eyes never leaving Webb's face. "This is General Morrison, authorization November 7 Delta. I need a security team to Fort Bragg firing range. Immediately. We have a compromised officer and a blown operation." He paused. "And get me the Secretary of Defense. We have a bigger problem than I thought." He hung up, turned to Hayes. "Release her now." Hayes fumbled with the keys, hands shaking. The handcuffs fell away and Rachel rubbed her wrists where the metal had cut into skin, drew blood, left marks that would bruise. Morrison's voice softened when he looked at her. "You okay, Rachel?" She met his eyes, nodded once. "Fine, sir." The lie was obvious. She wasn't fine, wouldn't be fine, but fine wasn't the point. The mission was the point, the truth was the point. And the truth was about to surface in ways that would shake Fort Bragg to its foundation. Morrison turned back to Webb. "You're confined to quarters pending investigation. Do not leave base. Do not contact anyone. Do not do anything except think very carefully about who you've been talking to and why." Webb opened his mouth to protest. "That's an order, Colonel." Webb left, but not before shooting Rachel a look that promised this wasn't over, that he'd find a way to finish what he started. Rachel watched him go, her heart rate still 55 beats per minute, still controlled, still steady. Because she'd known this moment was coming, had prepared for it. 3 years of being invisible, being overlooked, being dismissed, all leading to this. Morrison waited until the crowd dispersed, then spoke quietly. "You signaled 13. Rachel nodded. 13 hours until the evidence goes public. 13 hours until everyone knows who betrayed Blackwater, who sold intelligence to the enemy, who profited while 7 operators died. And Webb is one of them, but not the only one, not even the biggest one." Morrison's jaw tightened. "Nathan Cross." Rachel's expression finally showed something. Not anger, not hatred, something colder, something patient. "Nathan Cross, former intelligence officer, current defense contractor, living in Dubai, about to close a deal worth millions. A deal built on stolen intelligence, on blood, on the deaths of people who trusted their country to protect them." "We have 13 hours to get you to Dubai," Morrison said. 13 hours before Cross realizes his network is blown, before he runs. Rachel looked at the firing range, at the weapons she'd maintained for 3 years, at the place where she'd hidden in plain sight while building her case, gathering evidence, waiting. "I'll be ready, sir." Morrison nodded, then did something surprising. He saluted her, not the casual greeting between officers, the full formal salute, the kind you give to someone who's earned it in blood. "For the record, Rachel, your team would be proud." Rachel returned the salute, her hands steady despite everything, despite the pain, the exhaustion, the 3 years of pretending, 3 years of being less than she was. "For the record, sir, this isn't about pride, it's about bringing them home, all of them." Morrison understood. Blackwater hadn't just taken 7 lives, it had created 43 ghosts, intelligence assets who'd been compromised, local allies who'd been abandoned, people who'd trusted America and paid for that trust with everything. Rachel had 13 hours to bring them justice, 13 hours to prove that some debts always come due, some ghosts refuse to stay buried. 13 hours to show the world that the quiet woman they'd dismissed, the safety officer they'd mocked, was something they should have feared all along. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the one making noise. It's the one you never see coming. What did she see in those files? The secure briefing room at Fort Bragg looked exactly like every other secure briefing room Rachel had ever been in. Concrete walls, no windows, air that tasted recycled, fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly dead. Morrison sat across from her, a tablet between them, displaying files that technically didn't exist. 3 years, Morrison said. 3 years of being treated like you didn't matter, like you were just furniture. He shook his head. "I don't know how you did it." Rachel's fingers traced the edge of her coffee cup. "The same way anyone does undercover work, sir. One day at a time, one interaction at a time. You forget who you used to be, start believing your own cover, until moments like this morning remind you. The arrest was always part of the plan." "Not exactly. We knew Webb was dirty. We knew he'd eventually make a move. Rachel's voice carried no emotion, just facts, just reality. We didn't expect him to move this fast. Something spooked him. Morrison pulled up security footage on the tablet. Park running Rachel's badge through scanners. Brooks watching her with barely concealed suspicion. Williams creating situations to test her reactions. They were probing, looking for weakness, looking for proof that you were more than you appeared. They found it. No, Morrison's voice was firm. They found what we wanted them to find, enough to make them nervous, not enough to compromise the operation. He paused until Webb forced the issue. The tablet screen changed. Surveillance photos. Webb meeting with someone in a parking garage, the figure's face obscured. Then another photo, same parking garage, different angle, and there just barely visible in the reflection of a car window. Nathan Cross. Rachel's jaw tightened. When was this? 72 hours ago. Cross flew in from Dubai, met with Webb, flew back out the same day. Morrison leaned forward. We think he came to warn Webb, to tell him the operation was getting too hot, that they needed to shut it down. By arresting me. By eliminating the threat before you could expose them. Morrison's expression was grim. Webb was supposed to make you disappear. Enhanced interrogation. Black site. An accident during transport. Something that couldn't be traced back, couldn't be investigated. But you stopped it. Morrison's smile was thin. I've been watching you for 3 years, Rachel. Did you really think I'd let them take you without a fight? Rachel studied the general, trying to read him, trying to understand if this was genuine or another layer of the game. In her world, in the world of intelligence and betrayal, trust was a luxury you couldn't afford. Show me the rest, she said. Morrison hesitated, then unlocked a folder marked BLACKWATER actual. What she saw inside made her breath catch despite years of training, despite thinking she was prepared. Mission photos from 5 years ago. Her team, alive and smiling before insertion. 7 faces. 7 people she'd trusted with her life. 7 people who'd trusted intelligence that was wrong, deliberately wrong. The mission brief had been clean, in and out. Extract a high-value target who claimed to have information about chemical weapons. Standard operation. Minimal risk, except every piece of intelligence was fabricated. The target didn't exist. The safe house was a kill zone. The extraction point was compromised before they even landed. Rachel's hand trembled slightly as she scrolled through the documents. Communications intercepts, financial transfers, coded messages that, when decoded, showed a pattern, a network, people selling information, people profiting from betrayal. And at the center of it all, Nathan Cross. These transfers, Rachel pointed to a series of bank records, offshore accounts, shell companies. $2 million 2 weeks before Blackwater, $10 million 6 months after. Morrison nodded. Cross sold the intelligence that killed your team, sold it to the highest bidder, created the mission as a trap, used American operators as bait to prove his credibility to foreign actors. Why? Money, power, access. Morrison's voice was bitter. Cross saw an opportunity. He had access to classified information, knew which operations were planned, which assets were vulnerable, so he started selling. Small things at first, then bigger, then Blackwater. And no one caught him. Someone did. Morrison pulled up another file. Your team leader, Bishop. He suspected something was wrong 3 days before the mission. Sent an encrypted message to headquarters. Raised concerns about the intelligence, about the timing. Rachel's chest tightened. She'd never known. Bishop had never mentioned his concerns to the team, never said a word. The message was flagged, Morrison continued, buried, by someone in the chain of command who was part of Cross's network. Webb, Morrison confirmed. He made sure Bishop's concerns never reached anyone who could stop the mission. Made sure your team walked into that kill zone without knowing they'd been sold out. Rachel closed her eyes, remembered that night. The compound that was supposed to be secure. The explosion that killed 3 of her teammates instantly. The firefight that followed. Bishop's voice over comms, calm even as he bled out, telling her to run, to survive, to make sure someone knew the truth. The files showed more. 43 local intelligence assets who'd been compromised after Blackwater. Families who'd been targeted. People who'd helped America, trusted America, and paid for that trust when Cross sold their names to the enemy. 3 years, Rachel said quietly. 3 years you've known this. Why wait? Why not arrest Cross immediately? Because Cross is smart. Morrison's frustration was evident. Everything's layered, proxies, intermediaries, shell companies. We had evidence but not enough to convict, not enough to dismantle his entire network. He paused, and Cross is protected. He has friends, powerful friends, congressmen who benefit from his contracts, intelligence officials who look the other way, military leadership who owe him favors. So you needed ironclad evidence. We needed you. Morrison met her eyes. We needed someone who could go deep, who could become invisible, who could gather evidence from the inside, someone with the skills to survive, the patience to wait, the motivation to see it through. You used me as bait. We gave you a chance for justice. There's a difference. Rachel wasn't sure there was, but it didn't matter now. The operation was blown. Webb knew, Cross knew. The 13-hour clock was ticking. What's in Dubai? She asked. Cross is meeting with buyers, foreign intelligence services, terrorist organizations, anyone willing to pay for American secrets. Morrison pulled up schematics. Burj Al Arab, penthouse suite. Security is extensive but manageable. He'll be there for 3 days, closing deals, making millions. And you want me to stop him? I want you to finish what your team started. Morrison's voice softened. Bishop's last message, the one he sent before he died, you know what it said. Rachel shook her head. That message had been classified, buried with the rest of the Blackwater files. Morrison pulled it up. 7 words, handwritten in blood on a piece of paper Bishop had in his pocket when they recovered his body. The dead don't rest until the living make things right. Rachel felt something crack inside her chest, the wall she'd built, the distance she'd maintained, 3 years of being numb, of being invisible, of forgetting who she was. Bishop had known he was dying, had known Rachel would survive, and he'd left her a mission, a purpose, a reason to keep going. I'll need a team, Rachel said. You'll have one. Morrison pulled up another file, Bishop's network. After Blackwater, some of his intelligence contacts survived, went underground. They've been waiting, watching, ready to help when the time came. Ghost Network. They call themselves that, yes. Morrison smiled slightly, led by someone who goes by the name Bishop. Apparently he had a protege, someone he trained, someone who understood his vision. Rachel's mind raced. Bishop's protege. Someone who'd been deep enough in the network to survive. Someone who'd spent 5 years building a case, waiting for the right moment. You've been working with them. They've been working with us. There's a difference. Morrison leaned back. Cross thinks he's untouchable, thinks his network protects him, but he doesn't know about Ghost Network. Doesn't know they've been documenting everything, every meeting, every transaction, every betrayal. And they're in Dubai. They're everywhere. Morrison's expression was grim. Cross built his empire on betrayal. Bishop's people have spent 5 years infiltrating it, becoming part of it, gathering evidence from the inside. Rachel understood now, the scope of it, the patience required. This wasn't just about arresting Cross. It was about dismantling everything, every connection, every corrupt official, every profiteer who'd traded American lives for personal gain. When do I leave? Sunrise, Morrison checked his watch. 6 hours. You'll travel as a security consultant. Cover identity is already established. Ghost Network will make contact once you land. Rachel nodded, started to stand, then paused. The 7 stars, my tattoo. How did you know? Morrison's expression softened. Bishop's last message wasn't just 7 words. It included a sketch. 7 stars in a specific pattern. He said if anyone ever showed up with that mark, we should trust them, help them, because they'd be the one who made it out, the one who could finish the mission. Rachel's hand went to her collarbone, to the tattoo she'd gotten 6 months after Blackwater. 7 stars for 7 teammates, a permanent reminder, a promise. I added an 8th star last year, she said quietly. Morrison raised an eyebrow. 4. Hope. Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. Because if I stop believing justice is possible, then they died for nothing. The general stood, extended his hand. Ghost 7, bring them home. Rachel shook his hand, feeling the weight of it, the responsibility, the trust. Then she left the briefing room, left Fort Bragg, left behind 3 years of pretending to be someone she wasn't. 6 hours until sunrise. 6 hours to prepare for Dubai, for Cross, for the final accounting. In her quarters, Rachel packed methodically. Not weapons, recording devices, evidence collection materials, legal documents that would give her actions official sanction. This wasn't a military operation. It was law enforcement, justice, not revenge. But underneath it all, she was still Ghost 7. Still the operator who'd survived when no one else had. Still carrying the weight of 7 teammates who deserved better than to be forgotten. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, message in plain text. The dead don't rest. See you on the other side. 7. Rachel smiled, typed back. Ghosts don't exist. We do. Then she finished packing. Ready for Dubai, ready for Cross, ready to prove that some debts always come due. Some ghosts refuse to stay buried. Some justice waits years to arrive, but arrives nonetheless. The sun would rise in 6 hours, and when it did, Ghost 7 would be on a plane, flying toward the final mission, the one that would either vindicate her team or bury her with them. Either way, the ghosts would finally rest. Who was waiting in Dubai? The flight to Dubai took 12 hours. Rachel spent most of it reviewing files, memorizing faces, studying schematics, Cross's penthouse at the Burj Al Arab, security protocols, exit routes, everything Morrison's team had gathered over 3 years of surveillance, everything Ghost Network had added through their own infiltration. But her mind kept returning to one document, Bishop's psychological profile, written 5 years before Blackwater, before everything went wrong. Subject demonstrates exceptional ability to read people, to understand motivations, to predict behavior based on minimal information, recommended for deep cover operations requiring extended isolation and autonomous decision-making. Rachel had read her own profile once, years ago. It said something similar. Maybe that's why Bishop had trusted her, why he'd seen something in her worth saving, worth training, worth turning into Ghost 7. The cabin attendant offered coffee. Rachel accepted, sipping the bitter liquid while watching the clouds pass below. Somewhere down there, 40,000 feet below, normal people lived normal lives, worried about normal things, mortgages, relationships, what to have for dinner. Rachel envied them, then felt guilty for the envy, because her teammates didn't get normal lives, didn't get to worry about mortgages or dinner. They got shallow graves in Syria and families who were told their loved ones died serving their country, told to be proud. Pride doesn't fill the empty chair at Thanksgiving, doesn't answer when you wake up at 3 in the morning and reach for someone who isn't there. Rachel's phone buzzed, encrypted message, from a number that cycled through proxies, making it untraceable. Asset confirms Cross arrived, penthouse suite, security is heavy but manageable, your room is prepared, welcome to the hunt, B. Bishop's protege, the person running Ghost Network. Rachel had never met them, never spoken to them. All communication through encrypted channels, dead drops, messages that deleted themselves after reading. But they'd been with her every step of the way. 3 years of invisible support, evidence appearing when needed, witnesses coming forward at the right moment, protection from shadows she never saw but knew existed. Rachel typed back, ETA 6 hours, extraction timeline. Response came immediately. Cross's meeting is in 24 hours. After that, he disappears. This is our only window. Rachel acknowledged, deleted the conversation, watched it vanish from her phone like it had never existed. The plane began its descent. Dubai's skyline appeared on the horizon, glass and steel rising from the desert, a city built on ambition, on oil money and tourism, and the kind of aggressive modernization that turns sand into skyscrapers in a generation. Somewhere in that maze of wealth and power, Nathan Cross was preparing for the biggest deal of his career, selling intelligence worth hundreds of millions, finalizing contracts that would make him richer than he already was, untouchable. He had no idea that the ghosts were coming. Immigration waved Rachel through. Her cover identity was solid. Security consultant. In Dubai for a conference. Nothing unusual. Nothing worth a second look. She collected her bags and walked through customs with the confidence of someone who belonged. Outside, the heat hit like a physical force. Dubai in July, 120 degrees, air that felt thick enough to chew. Rachel's taxi driver barely spoke English, which was fine. She barely spoke at all. The drive to her hotel took 40 minutes through traffic that moved like a living thing. Luxury cars, construction everywhere, the city constantly building, constantly reaching higher. Her hotel room overlooked the Burj Al Arab in the distance, the iconic sail-shaped building where Cross was staying, where justice waited. Rachel unpacked her equipment methodically, recording devices, camera, legal documents, everything she needed to build a case that would hold up in court. Then she found the envelope that hadn't been there when she packed. Inside, a photograph, her unit in Syria, all 7 of them taken just days before Blackwater, young, confident, smiling, not knowing what was coming, not knowing that most of them had less than a week to live. Across the bottom, handwritten, "They're watching, make them proud, B." Rachel set the photo on the nightstand, studied the faces. Bishop, Davis, Martinez, Chen, Rodriguez, Kim, and herself, Ghost 7, the only survivor. She'd been 26 when that photo was taken, looked younger, less worn, less haunted. 3 years as a range safety officer had aged her in ways that had nothing to do with time. Being invisible wore you down, made you question who you really were, whether the person you used to be still existed under all the pretending. Her phone rang. Morrison's voice was calm but urgent. "We have a problem." Cross moved up his timeline. "The meeting's in 4 hours, not tomorrow night." Rachel felt her pulse quicken, but her voice remained steady. "Why?" "Bishop's network." Morrison sounded frustrated. Cross somehow figured out they were monitoring him. He spooked, moving fast, trying to close the deal before we can stop him. "How much does he know?" "Not enough." Morrison's tone suggested he hoped that was true. "He knows someone's watching, doesn't know it's us, doesn't know about Ghost Network or their infiltration, but he's not taking chances." 4 hours. Rachel looked at her equipment, at the photo of her team, at the Dubai skyline, ready or not indeed. But then again, they'd been preparing for this moment for 5 years. If not now, when? "I'm ready." "Good hunting, Ghost 7. Morrison paused, and Rachel, "Bring them home, all of them." The line went dead. Rachel armed herself with the tools of law, not war, recording devices, warrants, the authority of justice rather than revenge. But underneath it all, she was still Ghost 7. Still the operator who'd survived the unsurvivable. And tonight, she would prove that some spirits don't rest until the truth is told. Her phone buzzed. New message. Meeting location changed, underground parking, level B3, access through service entrance. Security will be minimal, Cross is trying to stay invisible. Rachel acknowledged, started preparing. 4 hours, 240 minutes, 14,400 seconds to end a 5-year nightmare, to bring 43 ghosts in from the cold. She checked her gear, then checked it again. Habit, training, the ritual that separated professionals from amateurs. Everything had to be perfect. One mistake, one forgotten detail, and Cross would slip away, disappear into his network of protection and power. Another message: we'll be watching. If it goes wrong, we'll pull you out. But Rachel, if it comes to a choice between you and the evidence, save the evidence. The mission matters more than any one person. Rachel understood. Ghost Network operated by the same rules she did. Mission first, always. Personal safety was secondary. Survival was a luxury, not a guarantee. She typed back, understood, see you on the other side. Then she dressed, dark clothing, professional but forgettable, added a small cross necklace, wedding ring on her left hand, details that made her look like someone's wife, someone's mother, harmless, unthreatening. The best disguise was always hiding in plain sight. Rachel left her room 3 hours before the meeting, took a taxi to a shopping district, walked through 3 different malls, checking for surveillance, for anyone following, for any sign that Cross's security knew she was coming. Nothing. The streets were crowded with tourists and locals, no one watching, no one caring. She found a cafe, ordered coffee she didn't drink, watched the entrance, waited. Her phone buzzed, final confirmation, B3 level, southwest corner, black Mercedes, license plate DXB 7734. Cross will arrive at 2200 hours, meeting scheduled for 15 minutes. In and out, fast. Rachel checked her watch, 90 minutes. She finished her fake coffee, paid, left, took another taxi toward the Burj Al Arab, but got out 2 blocks away, walked the rest, entering through a service entrance that Ghost Network had unlocked remotely. The underground parking was exactly as described: concrete, fluorescent lights, cars worth more than houses. Rachel found a position in the shadows, between a Rolls-Royce and a Bentley, where she could see the black Mercedes, where she could record everything. Her equipment was already running, recording to encrypted cloud storage that would upload automatically, even if Cross found her. Even if this went sideways, the evidence would survive. 60 minutes. Rachel's heart rate was 55 beats per minute, controlled, steady, but her hands shook slightly, not from nerves, from anticipation. From knowing that after 5 years, after 3 years of pretending, after 43 ghosts crying out for justice, the moment was finally here. 30 minutes, car engines in the distance, getting closer. Rachel pressed deeper into the shadows, became part of them, invisible. 15 minutes, the black Mercedes arrived, exactly on time, exactly where Ghost Network said it would be. 2 men in the front, security, 1 man in the back. Nathan Cross. Rachel's breath caught. 5 years of waiting, 5 years of preparing, and there he was, older than his photos, grayer, but still carrying himself with that particular arrogance of someone who thought they were untouchable, someone who'd gotten away with murder and profited from it. Cross exited the vehicle, looked around, checking, always checking. Then a second car arrived, 4 men, Middle Eastern, expensive suits, briefcases. The buyers. Rachel's equipment was recording everything: faces, voices, license plates, evidence that would link Cross to foreign intelligence services, to terrorists, to people buying American secrets. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Cross handed over documents, USB drives, information that had cost American lives to gather, information he'd stolen, information he was selling for $10 million wired to an offshore account. The buyers seemed satisfied, nodding, smiling. One of them said something in Arabic. Rachel's earpiece translated automatically. "This will serve us well. America's secrets delivered by America's own." Cross laughed. "Business is business. Your money spends as well as anyone's." Then it happened. The moment Rachel had been waiting for. The moment when Cross's arrogance became his downfall. He pulled out his phone, made a call, speaker on. "Webb, it's done. The package is delivered. Your cut will be transferred within the hour." Webb's voice crackled through. "Good, any problems?" "None," Cross sounded confident. "The operation to eliminate our observer was successful. By now, she's either dead or detained. Either way, she's not a threat anymore." Rachel's jaw tightened. They were talking about her, about the arrest that morning, about how close she'd come to disappearing into a black site, about how they'd tried to eliminate her before she could expose them. "Are you certain?" Webb sounded nervous. Morrison seemed unusually interested, almost like he knew something. "Morrison's a patriot. Cross's contempt was obvious. He'll follow the evidence. And the evidence says Rachel Cross was a fraud, a wannabe SEAL who stole classified information. By the time anyone figures out the truth, we'll be long gone." "Where to next?" "Moscow, then Beijing, then whoever's buying." Cross laughed again. "The world's a big place, Webb. Plenty of countries willing to pay for American intelligence." The call ended. Cross pocketed his phone, shook hands with the buyers, returned to his Mercedes, drove away. Rachel stayed in the shadows, recording everything, her hands no longer shaking, her heart rate steady, because this was it, the evidence that would destroy Cross, that would expose Webb, that would vindicate her team. This was justice. Her phone buzzed. "Ghost Network, we have it all. Evidence is uploading now. Copies going to Morrison, FBI, DOJ, media outlets. By tomorrow, everyone will know." Rachel typed back, "What about Cross?" "Already handled. Local authorities have been notified. Warrants are being issued. He won't make it to the airport." Rachel allowed herself a small smile. Then she walked out of the parking garage, into the Dubai night, into the moment when shadows became substance, when whispers became testimony, when the dead finally spoke through the living. The hunt was over. Justice had arrived. And somewhere, Rachel liked to think, Bishop and 6 other ghosts were finally resting. What happened when the truth came out? The news broke at dawn. Rachel watched it from her hotel room. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, every major outlet running the same story. American defense contractor arrested in Dubai, accused of selling classified intelligence to foreign actors. Evidence suggesting a network of corruption reaching into the highest levels of military command. Photos of Cross being led away in handcuffs, his face pale, his confidence shattered. The man who thought he was untouchable learning that no one's beyond reach when the truth comes calling. But the story didn't stop there. Within hours, more arrests. Colonel Webb at Fort Bragg, 3 congressmen who'd taken payments from Cross's shell companies, 5 intelligence officers who'd looked the other way, dozens of people who'd profited from betrayal. The network was collapsing, not slowly, not quietly, but in spectacular fashion, live on television for the world to see. Rachel's phone rang. "Morrison." "You did it." His voice carried relief and exhaustion in equal measure. 5 years of investigation, 3 years of waiting, and you actually did it. "We did it," Rachel corrected. "Ghost Network did most of the work. I was just the visible piece." "Don't sell yourself short." Morrison sighed. "Webb's talking, trying to cut a deal. He's giving up names, people we didn't even know were involved. This is bigger than we thought." "How much bigger?" "Remember Blackwater, the intelligence failure?" Morrison's voice hardened. "It wasn't a failure. It was intentional. Cross sold your team's location, sold the mission details, created the ambush, used American operators as bait to prove his credibility to buyers." Rachel already knew this, but hearing it confirmed. Hearing it stated as fact rather than suspicion, it made something cold settle in her chest. My team walked into a trap. Your team walked into a trap that Cross designed and profited from. Morrison paused. I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm sorry it took this long to prove it. Sorry your teammates didn't live to see justice. Rachel looked at the photo on her nightstand. 7 faces. 7 people who'd trusted their country, who'd believed the mission was real, who'd died never knowing they'd been betrayed by one of their own. What happens now? She asked. Now trials, lots of trials, Cross, Webb, everyone connected to the network. Morrison's tone suggested satisfaction. We're building cases that will put them away for life. Multiple life sentences. No parole, no deals, no escape. And the 43 assets. We're bringing them home. Morrison's voice softened. Morrison's voice softened. The intelligence assets who were compromised. The local allies who were abandoned. Ghost Network located 37 of them, alive, in hiding, waiting for extraction. Rachel's hand trembled. 37 out of 43, more than she dared hope. The other 6 didn't make it. Morrison's words were gentle but final. Cross's buyers found them first. I'm sorry. Rachel closed her eyes. 6 more ghosts to add to the 7 she already carried. 13 people who'd paid for Cross's greed. 13 families who'd lost someone they loved. We're coordinating with State Department, Morrison continued. Emergency visas, protection, relocation assistance. Everyone who helped us, everyone who's at risk because of Cross's betrayal, we're getting them out. That's something. Rachel's voice was quiet, not much, but something. It's more than something, it's what Bishop would have wanted, what your team would have wanted. Morrison paused. There's going to be a ceremony. Fort Bragg, 2 weeks. Posthumous medals for your team. Recognition of their service. The truth about what happened. Rachel wasn't sure how she felt about that. Medals didn't bring people back. Recognition didn't fill empty chairs. But maybe it mattered to the families. Maybe it helped them understand their loved ones hadn't died in vain. I'll be there, she said. Good. And Rachel, Morrison's voice carried weight. You're being reactivated, full rank, full honors. Ghost 7 becomes an official designation. What you did, the years you spent undercover, that's being recognized too. I don't want recognition, sir. I want to make sure this never happens again. Then help us make sure. Morrison's tone became businesslike. We're building a new counterintelligence unit, dedicated to rooting out corruption, internal threats, people who profit from betrayal. I want you to lead it. Rachel considered. 3 years of being invisible, being dismissed, being overlooked. The chance to turn that into something permanent, something that protected people like her team, like Bishop, like the 43 assets whose names Cross had sold. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Morrison paused. There's someone here who wants to talk to you. Been waiting for 3 years to say this in person. The line clicked. A new voice came through, deep, familiar, impossible. Ghost 7, about time you finished the mission. Rachel's breath caught. Bishop. Not quite, the voice laughed, but close. Bishop's protege, the one running Ghost Network, the one who's been watching your back for 3 years. Who are you? Does it matter? The question was gentle. You know what Bishop would say. The mission matters, the people matter. Names are just noise. Rachel understood. Ghost Network operated in shadows for a reason. Revealing identities put people at risk, made them vulnerable. Thank you, she said instead, for everything, for keeping me alive, for making this possible. Don't thank me yet, there's still work to do. The voice became serious. Cross's network ran deep. We got the big players, but there are more. Smaller fish, people who helped, people who knew and said nothing. How many? Hundreds, maybe thousands. People who saw something wrong and chose profit over duty. People who enabled Cross because it was easier than fighting him. Rachel felt the weight of it, the scope. One arrest wouldn't fix a system built on corruption. One trial wouldn't change a culture that valued personal gain over service. What do you need from me? The same thing Bishop would have asked. Keep fighting. Keep watching. Keep making sure the next generation of operators doesn't walk into traps designed by their own people. Rachel looked at the photo again. 7 faces. 7 people who'd deserved better. Who'd served with honor and died because someone else's honor was for sale. I can do that. I know you can. Ghost Network will be here, in the shadows, watching, supporting, making sure justice has teeth. The line went dead. Rachel sat in silence for a long moment, processing, understanding. 3 years of pretending to be someone she wasn't, 3 years of being invisible, and now, suddenly, she was visible again. Ghost 7, the survivor, the one who'd brought down a network. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like obligation, like the beginning of something rather than the end. Her phone buzzed, message from Morrison, attached files, 43 names. The intelligence assets Cross had compromised, their families, their stories. Rachel read through them, each one a person, each one someone who'd trusted America, someone who'd risked everything to help, someone who'd paid when that help was betrayed. 37 were coming home, 6 were already gone, but their stories would be told, their sacrifice would be remembered, their families would know they mattered. Rachel started writing, a report, a testimony, a detailed account of everything that had happened, not for the public, not for the media, but for the families so they'd know, so they'd understand, so the empty chairs at their tables would have meaning. She wrote for 12 hours straight, barely stopping, barely breathing, getting it all down while the details were fresh, while the emotions were raw. Then she sent it to Morrison, encrypted, classified, for the families only. Her phone rang again, unknown number. Rachel almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Ghost 7? The voice was old, trembling, female. Rachel's instincts went on alert. Who is this? My name is Chen Mei Chen. The voice broke slightly. My daughter was on your team. Chen. Sarah Chen. She died at Blackwater. Rachel's chest tightened. She remembered Sarah. Young, brilliant, fluent in 6 languages, had a laugh that could light up the darkest situations, died in the initial explosion, never had a chance. Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry. No, the old woman's voice was firm despite the tears. No more sorry. I called to say thank you for not forgetting, for not giving up, for making sure the truth came out. Rachel didn't know what to say. Thank you seemed inadequate. Your welcome seemed wrong. My daughter, Mrs. Chen continued. She talked about you, about Ghost 7. Said you were the toughest operator she'd ever met. Said if anything happened, you'd be the one who survived, the one who made sure the mission was completed. Rachel's eyes burned. She hadn't cried in 3 years, hadn't allowed herself. But now, hearing Sarah's mother's voice, the walls cracked. She was right, Mrs. Chen whispered. You survived. You completed the mission. You brought my daughter's killers to justice. That means something. That means everything. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Mrs. Chen spoke again. There's going to be a memorial for all 7, 2 weeks at Fort Bragg. Will you speak? Will you tell people who they were, what they meant? Rachel swallowed hard. I'm not good with words, Mrs. Chen. You don't need to be. You just need to tell the truth. That's all, just the truth. Rachel agreed, hung up, sat in her hotel room staring at nothing, feeling everything. 2 weeks until the memorial. 2 weeks until she stood in front of families and colleagues and told them about Blackwater, about the betrayal, about 7 people who'd served with honor and died for someone else's profit. 2 weeks to find the words that would make sense of senseless loss, that would give meaning to sacrifice, that would turn pain into purpose. Rachel started writing again, not a report this time, a eulogy, 7 eulogies, one for each teammate, telling their stories, honoring their service, making sure they were remembered not as casualties but as people. Bishop, the leader who'd suspected something was wrong but walked into the trap anyway because he trusted his team more than his doubts. Davis, the point man who died covering the team's retreat, buying time with his life. Martinez, the medic who tried to save people while bullets tore through the compound. Chen, the linguist who translated last words for local allies as they died. Rodriguez, the engineer who'd held a door so others could escape. Kim, the sniper who'd provided cover from a rooftop until the building collapsed. And Rachel, Ghost 7, the survivor who'd carried their memory for 5 years, who'd pretended to be less than she was so she could become more than anyone expected. The words came slowly, painfully, but they came, and when Rachel finished she had something worth saying, something worth sharing, something that honored the dead while challenging the living to be better. Her phone showed a new email from Morrison, subject line, video from Webb's interrogation. Rachel opened it, watched, Webb sitting in an interrogation room, broken, defeated, confessing to everything, names, dates, payments, the entire network laid bare. But what struck Rachel wasn't the confession. It was something Webb said near the end. We thought she was nobody, just a range safety officer, someone we could ignore, someone who didn't matter. The realization of his mistake was obvious in his voice. We never saw it coming, never thought she'd be the one to bring us down. The interrogator asked why. Because we judged her by her position, not her potential. Webb laughed bitterly. We thought the uniform defined the person. We forgot that the most dangerous threats are the ones you never see coming. The video ended. Rachel closed her laptop, stood, looked out at Dubai's skyline as the sun set, painting the city in shades of red and gold. 2 weeks until the memorial. 2 weeks until she faced the families. 2 weeks until Ghost 7 became a name people knew instead of a designation in classified files. But tonight she was still just Rachel Cross, the woman who'd survived, who'd fought, who'd proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the one making noise, it's the one you never see coming. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And when it acts, when justice finally arrives, when the truth finally surfaces after years in darkness, it changes everything. Rachel packed her bags, prepared to leave Dubai, prepared to return to Fort Bragg, to face her past, to honor her team, to begin whatever came next. The ghosts were finally resting. The living had made things right, and somewhere Rachel liked to think Bishop was smiling. The mission was complete, but the work was just beginning. What does healing look like for a ghost? The memorial service at Fort Bragg was scheduled for 1400 hours. Rachel arrived at 0630, 5 hours early. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't sit still in her quarters while the weight of what was coming pressed down like a physical thing. The memorial plaza was empty, quiet. Morning sun cutting through the trees, making patterns on the stone. Someone had set up chairs, a podium, flowers, all the trappings of ceremony, all the rituals humans use to make sense of death. Rachel walked to the memorial wall. New names had been added, freshly engraved. Bishop, Davis, Martinez, Chen, Rodriguez, Kim, and below them in smaller letters, Blackwater Mission Syria 5 years ago, betrayed but not forgotten. She traced each name with her fingers. The stone was cool despite the morning heat, solid, permanent. These names would outlast everyone at the ceremony today, would outlast Cross and Webb and everyone who'd profited from their deaths. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. Ghost 7, a voice behind her, familiar Morrison. Rachel turned. The general looked older than he had 2 weeks ago, the kind of aging that comes from stress rather than time, from carrying the weight of what he knew, what he'd learned, what the investigation had uncovered. "You're early." Couldn't stay away. Morrison joined her at the wall, looked at the names. "I knew Bishop. served with him in Afghanistan, best intelligence officer I ever met, had this ability to see 3 moves ahead, to understand how pieces fit together before anyone else did. Rachel nodded. He trained me, taught me that intelligence work isn't about information. It's about understanding people, understanding why they do what they do. Morrison smiled sadly. Sounds like Bishop. He paused. The family started arriving last night. They wanted to meet you, talk to you, hear about their loved one's last moments. Rachel's chest tightened. That's the part she'd been dreading. Not the speeches, not the ceremony, but the private conversations. The parents who wanted to know if their child suffered. The spouses who needed to believe their partner died quickly. The children who'd grown up without a parent and deserved to understand why. How many? 23 family members, spouses, parents, siblings. Morrison checked his watch. Their gathering in the chapel, wanted to meet before the ceremony, before the crowds, before it became official. Rachel wasn't ready, would never be ready, but that wasn't the point. These families had waited 5 years for answers, 5 years of official lies and bureaucratic stonewalling, 5 years of being told their loved ones died in a training accident, that there were no remains to return, no details to share. Now they deserved the truth, all of it. The chapel was small, intimate. 23 people sat in pews talking quietly among themselves. They looked up when Rachel entered, and she saw it in their eyes, not anger, not blame, but hope. The desperate hope that she could give them something, some piece of their loved one they'd thought was lost forever. Mrs. Chen stood first, walked to Rachel with arms open, hugged her without asking, without hesitation. Rachel stood stiff for a moment, uncomfortable, unused to physical contact after years of keeping distance. Then slowly, carefully, she hugged back. "Thank you for coming." Mrs. Chen's voice was muffled against Rachel's shoulder. "Thank you for not forgetting my Sarah." One by one, the other families approached. Bishop's father, a retired colonel who shook Rachel's hand with a grip that still had strength despite his age. Davis's wife, holding a photograph of their daughter who'd been 2 when her father died, now 7 and asking questions her mother couldn't answer. Martinez's mother, who spoke only Spanish, but whose eyes conveyed everything words couldn't. Rachel spoke with each of them, told stories, shared memories, gave them pieces of their loved ones they'd never had. She told Bishop's father about how his son had suspected something was wrong, how he'd tried to stop the mission, how he'd fought to the end trying to save people. She told Davis's wife about the joke he'd made the night before the mission, something stupid about tacos, how he'd made everyone laugh, how his last act was covering the team's retreat, how he'd died a hero. She told Martinez's mother, through a translator, about her son's compassion, how he tried to save everyone, how he'd held the hand of a wounded local ally and told him in perfect Spanish that he wasn't alone, that someone cared. Each story was a gift, small, insufficient, but something, a piece of truth in years of lies. When she finished, Bishop's father stood. "My son wrote me a letter before the mission, said if anything happened I should find you, Ghost 7, said you were the strongest person he'd ever met, not physically, but here." He tapped his chest. "In the heart. In the will to keep going when everything says stop." Rachel's eyes burned. She'd never known about the letter. "Bishop believed you'd survive," his father continued. "Believed you'd make sure the truth came out. He was right." The old man's voice cracked. "Thank you for honoring his faith in you. Thank you for being the person he believed you were." Rachel couldn't speak, could only nod, the weight of it all threatening to crush her. The family stayed for another hour, sharing stories of their own, photos, letters, the small artifacts of lives cut short. Rachel listened to all of it, memorized faces, promised to remember. Because that's what ghosts do. They remember. They carry the weight of the fallen so the fallen aren't forgotten. The memorial service started at 1400 hours as scheduled. Hundreds of people, military, civilian, media, everyone wanting to witness history, the revelation of a conspiracy, the honoring of heroes, the official acknowledgement that Blackwater wasn't a training accident but a betrayal. Morrison spoke first, giving the official version, the facts, the investigation, the arrests, the convictions that were coming. He was professional, measured, the voice of authority explaining how the system had failed but was now correcting itself. Then he introduced Rachel, Ghost 7, the survivor, the woman who'd spent 3 years undercover to bring the truth to light. Rachel walked to the podium on legs that felt unsteady, looked out at the crowd, at the families in the front row, at the operators standing at attention, at the media cameras recording every word. She'd written a speech, 12 pages, carefully crafted, reviewed by public affairs, approved by legal, but standing there looking at Mrs. Chen's face, at Bishop's father's eyes, the prepared words felt wrong, felt insufficient. Rachel set the papers aside, spoke from memory instead, from the heart. 5 years ago, 7 operators went into Syria on a mission they believed in, a mission they trusted. They went because they were asked, because they were needed, because they believed their country would never send them into danger without good reason. Her voice was steady despite the emotion, despite the years of carrying this weight alone. They were wrong. The mission was a lie. The intelligence was fabricated. They walked into a trap designed by one of our own, someone who valued profit over duty, who sold their location, who used their sacrifice to prove his credibility to foreign buyers. The crowd was silent, absolutely silent. Bishop, Davis, Martinez, Chen, Rodriguez, Kim, 6 people who died that night. 6 people who deserve to be remembered not as casualties but as heroes who served with honor in a situation that had none. Rachel paused, looked at each family member. And one person who survived, not because I was better, not because I was luckier, but because they chose to sacrifice themselves so someone could make it out, so someone could tell the truth. Her voice cracked slightly. The first time in 3 years she'd let emotion show publicly. I spent 3 years pretending to be someone I wasn't, being dismissed, being overlooked, being treated like I didn't matter. And every day I thought about my team, about how they'd faced the same dismissal in their final moments, how they died knowing something was wrong but not knowing how deep the betrayal ran. Rachel's hands gripped the podium. This memorial isn't just about 7 operators. It's about 43 intelligence assets who were compromised. It's about families who were lied to. It's about a system that failed the people it was supposed to protect. And it's about the work we still have to do to make sure this never happens again. She looked directly at the camera, knowing Cross would see this eventually, knowing Webb would hear about it, knowing everyone who'd been part of the conspiracy would understand. To anyone who thinks they can profit from betrayal, who thinks they can sell American lives for personal gain, who thinks they're untouchable because of their position or their connections, this memorial is your warning. Ghost 7 exists, Ghost Network exists, and we will find you. Rachel stepped back from the podium. The crowd erupted, some in applause, some in tears, some in that complex mix of grief and anger and validation that comes from finally having the truth acknowledged. The ceremony continued with a 21-gun salute, taps played by a single bugler, the presentation of flags to the families, all the military rituals that honored the dead and gave structure to grief. But Rachel barely noticed. Her part was done, her testimony given, her promise to her team fulfilled. Afterward, as people milled around and families placed flowers at the memorial wall, Rachel found a quiet corner, watched from a distance, still not entirely comfortable being visible, being known. Morrison found her there. Hell of a speech. He handed her a bottle of water. Public affairs is furious you went off script. Legal is having a heart attack, but the families loved it. That's what matters. Rachel drank. The water was cold, grounding, real. What happens now? Now we rebuild. Morrison sat beside her on the bench. The counterintelligence unit I mentioned. It's approved, funded, operational in 6 weeks. I need someone to run it. Someone who understands betrayal from the inside. Someone who knows how to find corruption when it's hiding in plain sight. You want me to keep being a ghost? Morrison shook his head. No, I want you to lead ghosts, train them, deploy them. Build a network that protects the people who protect us. He paused. Bishop's protege agreed to help. Ghost Network will partner with us. Official channels working with shadow channels. The best of both worlds. Rachel considered. 3 years of being invisible. The chance to make it permanent. To build something that honored her team by preventing future betrayals. I'll do it on one condition. Name it. The families, all 43 intelligence assets who were compromised, everyone affected by Cross's network, they get support, counseling, relocation assistance, college funds for the kids, real support, not bureaucratic lip service. Morrison nodded, already in the works. State Department set up a dedicated office, victim assistance, full benefits, everything we can do to make things right. It won't bring them back. No, Morrison's voice was gentle, but it honors them, shows that their sacrifice mattered, that we learned, that we changed. Rachel looked at the memorial wall, at the 7 new names, at the families placing flowers, at the operator standing guard at attention, showing respect. She thought about Bishop's last message. The dead don't rest until the living make things right. Well, they'd made things right as they could be. Cross was in custody. Webb was confessing. The network was dismantled. The truth was public. Justice was served. Maybe now the ghosts could rest. Maybe now Ghost 7 could become just Rachel again. Not the survivor. Not the undercover operator. Not the weapon forged by trauma and loss. Just a person. A person who'd experienced unimaginable things and somehow, miraculously, was still standing. Mrs. Chen approached again, holding a small box. Sarah wanted you to have this. She gave it to me before the mission. Said if anything happened, if she didn't come back, to find Ghost 7 and give it to her. Rachel opened the box. Inside, a silver compass. Old, worn, engraved on the back, true north isn't a direction, it's a choice. Sarah said you'd understand. Mrs. Chen smiled through tears, said you'd know what it meant. Rachel did understand. In their work in intelligence operations, you couldn't always trust the official direction, the official orders. Sometimes you had to find your own true north, your own moral compass, and follow it no matter the cost. Thank you, Rachel whispered. Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. No, thank you, for being her true north, for never giving up, for bringing my daughter home even if it's just her name on a wall. The old woman left. Rachel stood alone with the compass, feeling its weight, understanding its meaning. The sun was setting now, painting Fort Bragg in shades of gold and red, the memorial plaza emptying, the ceremony over, the official part done. But the work was just beginning. Rachel walked to the memorial wall one last time, touched each name. I kept my promise, she said quietly, brought them down, got justice, made sure you're remembered. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the flowers, moving through the trees, almost like the dead were listening, almost like they approved. Rachel checked her watch, 7 stars on her wrist, the tattoo that marked her as Ghost 7, the survivor, the witness, the weapon. She'd add the 8th star soon, the one for hope, because if this could happen, if justice could prevail after 5 years of darkness, if the truth could overcome lies and power and corruption, then there was always hope. Even for ghosts, especially for ghosts. Rachel left the memorial plaza, headed toward her new assignment, her new mission, building something that would prevent future Blackwaters, that would protect future teams, that would honor her fallen by making sure they were the last to be betrayed. Behind her, the names on the wall stood eternal, permanent, remembered. Ahead, the work waited, the ghosts she would recruit, the operations she would run, the betrayals she would uncover and stop before they cost lives. Ghost 7 was ready, Rachel Cross was ready. And somewhere in the shadows, Bishop's network watched and approved, ready to support, ready to protect, ready to ensure that the dead never had to rest uneasy again. The sun set completely, darkness fell, but in that darkness Ghost 7 walked with purpose, with direction, with true north finally found. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And when it acts, when it moves through shadows and brings light to darkness, when it transforms personal pain into systemic change, it becomes something more than revenge, more than justice. It becomes legacy. The ghosts were finally resting, but their legacy was just beginning, and Rachel Cross, Ghost 7, survivor and leader, would make damn sure it mattered.